Alright, check this out. Here we have an Asus Zephyrus G15 with an 8-core Ryzen 5900HS, an 80-watt 3070, and a 165Hz 1440p display. This video will demonstrate frame rate and thermal performance expectations for Cyberpunk 2077 at 2 resolutions, 3 different settings, and compare it to a 125-watt 3070 from the 5800H equipped MECH G3. These results are using the turbo mode profile that applies a 100 MHz core and 120 MHz memory overclock to the GPU and a custom fan curve to maximize fan speed. Using these in-game settings as the base for our tests, we'll start with 1440p, ray tracing on, and DLSS off. This Zephyrus will dynamically boost its 3070 towards 100 watts. Combine this with the turbo mode profile that overclocks the 3070 core memory, it makes up the difference here, although 20 FPS is probably not an ideal experience on both solutions. Now the same situation occurs at 1080p. The Zephyrus is still able to dynamically boost in this test. This effect would likely not occur if the G15's 5900HS had to push a higher wattage 3070. You'll start to pick up on this the more you watch this channel's content over time. Moving on with 1440p, ray tracing on, and DLSS balanced, the higher wattage 3070 pulls ahead. Same settings at 1080p, the G15's 5900HS is pulling high wattage, and it's starting to become a slight bottleneck for its 3070 as it struggles to push it towards 80 watts. Now comparing this with a higher wattage MECH G3, its 5800H and 125 watt 3070 overcome the overclocked Zephyrus by 20%. Now let's go back to 1440p, turn off ray tracing and DLSS. Being less CPU bound allows the Zephyrus to dynamically boost its 3070 to 100 watts and closes the gap with its overclocked turbo profile, as the 5800H and the MECH G3 has to work harder here to push the higher wattage of its 3070. Same settings at 1080p, and the Zephyrus is slightly less CPU bound as it begins to dynamically boost past its 80 watt base. Meanwhile, the MECH G3 comes in at about 15% faster. Its 5800H is pulling higher wattage as it pushes its 125 watt 3070. Now these results here are close for 2 reasons. The turbo profile of the Zephyrus provides a 100 MHz core and 120 MHz memory clock to its 3070, and the slightly more efficient 5900HS combined with the lower wattage 3070 will more often provide dynamic boost performance of 100 watts.